Good morning, Mexico. Good afternoon, Europe. Here we are in our second Cappuccino Talk from LAA. It's a pleasure for me to be here sharing what I would say a very interesting topic which has to do with hackathons. Hackathons are growing in popularity. They integrate different practices such as design thinking, crowdsourcing, and it has been growing in terms of application in different organizations, corporates, and also smaller organizations. So today I have the pleasure to have Professor Tucci, Martin Herrera, and Monica Aceves to share to us their experiences about hackathons. So just as a very, very quick introduction, this is our second Cappuccino Talk. And basically, as you can imagine, I think most of us love coffee, and coffee, cappuccino, latte, espresso, and all these different coffee varieties. But here, what basically we are intending is to have some sort of break, but to share and learn and talk to each other, inviting key speakers from different organizations to share. So these are free webinars. We will be organizing these in a monthly basis. So if you have any suggestions or any topic that you are interested to learn or know more about, don't hesitate to send us your suggestions. So please get your seat, grab your cappuccino, your coffee, or your drink, and let's start this second Cappuccino Talk. Just super briefly, for those that don't know what is LAA or who we are, basically we are an association based in Switzerland. We started after a European project that we carried out as EPFL and other organizations like Cranfield, Warwick University, Rolls-Royce, Volkswagen, and so to learn practices to improve and accelerate the innovation process. And after that, we decided to continue the research and sharing the practices through this association that we call Lean Analytics Association. So our mission is to help organizations to learn, innovate, and share. For that, we have different services. Some of them regards training, organizing Gemba walks, doing this Gemba to understand problems, researching insights, organizing forums, and these Cappuccino Talks themselves. I will briefly share today what's there to innovate, and of course, organizing and helping organizations take the most out of and learn from the hackathons as part of their pro-development collaborative innovation process with clients and external insights. So here we are in our second Cappuccino Talk with hackathons, and we will have a very quick poll. So we are interested to know how many of you have ever attended a hackathon. How many of you have attended a hackathon? So I think you should see in your screens. Dorotea, please let me know if that's running, the poll.
Running.
It's running. Last time we had a poll and I was told I was very fast. So today we're going to give a couple of more seconds just to answer yes or no. Have you ever joined a hackathon? How many answers do we have, Dorotea? We have a question here. Can we proceed? Will you share the results, Dorotea? Dorotea?
Yeah, we didn't get any answer here, but we got some in the chat.
Ah, okay.
So there are a few people.
Few have joined.
Yes. And
okay.
Few have not.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move now to introduce our speakers. So I'm extremely happy to have very a lot of expertise, very experienced people with hackathons. So first of all, my pleasure to introduce Professor Christopher Tucci. He works still in the EPFL, soon moving to another university. I think it's already years that Professor Tucci has been working with design thinking and hackathons. And of course, he's an expert on innovation, researching about corporate innovations, crowdsourcing, and different topics. So pleasure to have you here, Professor Tucci. Then we have Martin Herrera, who's the head of the Internal Business Consulting Services team in CEMEX, and he does research on application of innovation and open innovation practices and tools. And actually, our experience as LAA running hackathons started with CEMEX already almost 2 years ago, working, they asked us to help on a hackathon. So that's how the story started, at least LAA working directly with companies on hackathons. And then Monica Aceves from Continental, we had also a great hackathon with them also a couple of years ago. And Monica is the leader, the innovation leader, also working on practices at the R&D Center in Querétaro, Mexico. So a pleasure to have the three of them here. Just a few insights, please. If you have any question, you can write it directly in the Q&A section. So there's a form you can see there under the menu. You can add your questions there. And also you can write, if you have any difficulty on the chat, you can write, and we have Dorothea McLean helping us behind the scenes, very present to help you out on any technicality. So we start now right away with the topic. Professor Tucci, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mirna. And welcome to all of you. I am going to just do a little background information to get us up to speed on what a hackathon is. And in some sense, it's kind of a combination of open innovation approaches, design thinking methods, and crowdsourcing. So in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can think about a hackathon and give you a little bit of background information. And then before we then go in to discuss specific cases of the two hackathons that Mirna mentioned. So let's start out with this, with these challenges. This is basically referring to the open innovation paradigm, which was popularized by Henry Chesbrough in his book in 2003 called Open Innovation. And if you think about what are some of the basic principles there, it's that, first of all, you can't have all the best people, inside your company. And then, if you do everything in-house without ever showing it to anybody or talking to anybody, then you run, that could have its pluses, but you also run the risk of producing something that nobody wants. So we say that's not very lean because producing something that nobody wants is kind of a waste of time and money. Also leadership. So, the leaders are the experts in everything. That's usually not the case. And so it's you have to be careful of that. The speed of innovation. If you do everything in-house, you're probably going to be slower than if you can somehow get people on the outside to help you a little bit. And in terms of resource and risk sharing, it's also considered to be kind of risky to do everything in-house when you could share some parts of that with partners. So that's the basic background here, sort of the principles of open innovation. Now, if you look at this famous funnel diagram that Henry Chesbrough used in his book, basically what you can see here is these are sort of R&D projects that are passing through the company, and they're working their way toward the market. So that's why they call it the funnel, because at the beginning of the funnel, you've actually got lots of projects going simultaneously. And eventually, you do certain kinds of checks on them. So the argument goes that like a stage gate process, you would check for technological feasibility. You might stop some, you might never even start some. You see that one there in the bottom left, never went forward. And then the one just above it made some progress, but then was stopped maybe for technological feasibility reasons. And then finally, you might combine some projects, and then you eventually do some kind of market testing and market feasibility. And then eventually, if everything goes well, then you end up taking the project to market. So that's kind of the closed innovation paradigm. And as you can see there, just below that, we've written in, there's no participation of subject matter experts in case, that means your internal R&D people may or may not have the subject matter expertise. You're not taking advantage of your open network. You're not taking advantage of your partners and suppliers, your customers, the end users, or other employees. They might know something that you're not aware of, and they might be able to help you. So if you look at the right-hand side of this graph now, you'll see this more so-called open innovation process. And here, what we can see is that we can source ideas from the outside. So we call that outside in. You know, for example, the internal research team, the partners and suppliers, customers and consumers, they might contribute knowledge that you can then import and use in your own internal projects. And then if you look at the upper right of this graph, you see of some of the things that are moving outside the boundary of the firm, outside the funnel. And we call that the inside out approach to open innovation, which is basically meaning that if you find something that doesn't fit very well, you may not just want to put it on the shelf and forget about it, but rather you could make a spin-off of it and try and create a new market in it, or somehow move it outside of your company or outside of your business model and let someone else commercialize it, but you could still get paid for that. So this is kind of an approach that says you want inside out, outside in addition to traditional R&D. Okay, so that's the quick intro to open innovation. Now let's talk about crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is another, people use crowdsourcing to refer to open innovation. And usually you might hear people saying, oh, we've got a new open innovation initiative, which involves crowdsourcing. So we think about the definition of crowdsourcing here. So, you know, this is the traditional, this is one of the early definitions by Jeff Howe. And he had an article in Wired magazine. It basically says that crowdsourcing is the act of taking a job traditionally performed by a designated agent, it could be an employee or a contractor, and outsourcing it to an undefined, generally large group of people in the form of an open call, commonly using the internet. So I think there's a lot of interesting pieces of this, but if you could take away something from this, it's that you used to do it inside, or maybe you picked somebody and you paid that person to do something for you. But instead of doing that, you are going to outsource it to a large group of people, usually using the internet. Okay. Now, you know, that's a pretty big, broad definition, and people might say, well, that's like a big umbrella. And, you know, there might be lots of other little pieces of the umbrella. So if you just look at 4 major pieces of the umbrella, you can think about doing micro tasks. So, you know, you can break a big project into small little chunks, and you can actually get crowds to work on micro tasks, you know, sort of the Amazon Mechanical Turk type approach, where you break a problem into small pieces. You have some people do small pieces of it, then you reassemble everything that they've done. Another angle on this is the macro task. So you're going to, you know, give a project to the crowd, and you kind of let them, kind of an open crowd approach. You kind of let them brainstorm and do what they want and suggest ideas for you. So this is more for the, you know, for R&D or for projects, for problems that you have, for problem solving, basically. Then you have crowdfunding. So people talk about crowdfunding because we think that, you know, crowdsourcing is for problem solving. But one of the problems that you might have is not having enough resources. So basically, crowdfunding is where you actually make a pitch to an undefined group of potential donors who have the resources to, you know, to give you access to some of their resources. And that can take the form of, you know, an equity stake in your company, to a pure grant, you know, giving you money, donations, lending you money, et cetera. So it's great for project fundraising. It's great for nonprofit disaster relief, artists. It's good for market research too, because you can also find out what people are interested in, and you can change your pitch a little bit and find out what resonates with people. And then finally, you can have a contest. So usually people think of a contest as being kind of like a competition between different users or groups. And there they are going to engage in something. You're only going to pay the winner a bigger prize. Whereas like in a micro task, you might pay everybody 10 cents or 25 cents. You know, in a contest, you might pay the winning team $1 million or whatever, and they can come up with something very, very, put a lot of effort into that, and it can come up with something very interesting to you. You know, examples here are logo designs, recruitments, you know, big problem solving. We'll talk about that in a minute, et cetera. So there's a wide range of things here that are under the umbrella of crowdsourcing. Okay, now you may ask yourself, well, how's it used in innovation? And I've been working on this for several years now. And I came up with 4 little categories here. One is, you know, you can have product and service innovation for a better customer experience. So you can basically make products that incorporate crowd dynamics in them. You can use crowdsourcing to improve products. You can get input on your products. You can get input, next one, you can get input on your innovation activities themselves. Or 4, you can make a platform that helps service a crowd, that helps match different parts of a crowd. So I think that there's lots of different ways that you can use crowdsourcing in your innovation process. I'll give you a few little examples here before we move on. So here's a list of some companies that are using crowdsourcing. I won't go into detail on these because I'm just going to pick a couple in the interest of time to give you some feeling for the different ways that crowdsourcing is being used. So you can see here Netflix, Zillow, Inside Tracker startup, Lego, Steer, another startup company, Waze, the Navigator. So let's just talk about a couple of these really quickly, and then we'll move on to the hackathons themselves. Next slide. Okay, so this first example we have is this Netflix, which, as you know, is a big internet streaming service. At the time, they weren't quite yet into streaming, but they were trying to keep people engaged on the platform to remain subscribers. And they were trying to come up with ways of reducing the error on suggestions for movies, for films. So in other words, if they suggested a movie to you, they thought you were going to love the movie and you hated that movie, that would be a big problem, because people, if you made bad suggestions too much, people would unsubscribe. So basically they worked on it for several years and they came to a plateau where they couldn't improve their predictions very well. And so about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago or so, they actually created a contest. They decided to pay $1 million prize. And they said, if anybody can make a 10% improvement in our error of our prediction error, then we're going to pay $1 million. And as you can see, the scale on this was enormous. Within 15 months, they already had 30,000 contestants. They were on 25,000 teams. They got over 20,000 submissions from 3,000 different teams. And they even had an improvement of 8.6%, which was, you got to remember that they couldn't get any improvement for a little while before this. After 1 year. And in fact, that algorithm that was proposed after 1 year was the one they actually implemented on their site, which is very, very interesting. And then the same team combined with other teams within 3 years, less than 3 years, had already come up with a 10% improvement, and they won the prize. Just moving on here. We asked them for data. We asked so I was working with my PhD student, Andre Villarroel, and Andre asked Netflix for the data on all the different submissions that they got. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but as you can see on the lower part of this graph, these little points, each point is one solution. And this is the first year or so of solutions. You can see that slowly but surely the bottom of that keeps moving down and down and down, which means that their error was getting lower and lower. The best submissions were getting better and better and better. And furthermore, the teams that came up with these winning solutions did not necessarily start at the bottom. Some of them started at the top with not very good solutions and then worked their way down to the frontier and ended up after 1 year being in the best position. Okay, here's a little example of a crowdsourcing, a kind of a Web 2.0 approach for new products for Lego. Let's watch this little video.
Have you ever had an idea for a new Lego set? On Lego Ideas, you can check out proposals for new Lego sets created by fans just like you. Find your favorite projects, vote, give feedback, and even submit your own. If a project gets 10,000 votes, it enters the Lego review phase. Then, our review board evaluates and selects which project will become the next Lego Ideas product. Members whose projects are selected are recognized for inspiring a Lego Ideas set and even receive a percentage of the product's sales. Once the design process is complete, the next Lego Ideas product is produced in our factory and shipped to stores. Finally, the Lego Ideas product is available to buy. And you made it happen on Lego Ideas. So what are you waiting for? Check out cool projects on the Discover page, or learn how to submit your own by clicking How It Works. The next set we approve might even be yours.
Okay, so there you can see, I mean, that's a pretty nice example of getting product development ideas using a crowd. Some random people make suggestions, some of them resonate with the crowd, and other people upvote it, and then they can use this as a sorting mechanism. So they don't have to waste their time looking at a bunch of, bad ideas. They can wait for the crowd to generate good ones, and they can take the best ones and then take those further. Okay, final example here is Waze. This is a kind of a combination of what I'm calling active and passive crowdsourcing. So, this is an old picture of how the interface looks, but it gives you the idea, which is that it's a navigation app, and probably most of you use it already. And the point is that, of course, it keeps track of where you are relative to everyone else who's using it. And therefore, they can aggregate up and figure out where traffic jams are. But it also allows you, so that's kind of the passive crowdsourcing. That's sort of your Internet of Things type approach, that you can aggregate data from lots of people and you can make a product out of it. But as you notice on the right-hand side of this graph, though, that there are different things that you as a user can point out. So, for example, if you see a speed camera, you can say there's a speed camera here, or there's a police trap, or there's an accident on the side of the road. And you can also give your mood. So you can say, I'm in a very good mood. If you can see the upper left of that little graphic there, you can say, I'm in a very good mood. And so the combination of you identifying these various hazards plus you giving your mood, they can take all of that information and they can use it to get to navigate around problem spots. So it's somehow improving the product and service that they're offering by the use of this crowd. Let's keep going. So now we're gonna. So what does this have to do with hackathons per se? That's a good question, and the fact is that we're going to use some kind of crowd input in real time in a business hackathon. So let's talk about business hackathons for a minute. The hackathon, the original concept was, done for people that wanted to do coding. They wanted to get together and make some kind of applications. They would stay there for the whole weekend. At the end of the weekend, people would present their prototypes. And so over the last couple years, this has evolved into something that's also useful for business. So it's not about coding. It's not about taking a technical problem and coming up with a technical solution anymore. What these are about is taking a business problem or a business challenge and coming up with different kinds of solutions. So that's the idea. So it's got an element of competition to it. And as you can see here, these are some photos from some of the hackathons that we worked on over the last couple of years. We've been doing many of them, probably on the order of 20, actually. And we're going to talk about 2 of them later today. But as you can see, that these are short. They're coming in 24 to 48 hours. People work all day, all night. We give them food. They brainstorm. They make prototypes, etc. And they follow a design thinking methodology in a very short period of time. And so I think that's the interesting thing. And they are reacting to a business challenge as opposed to a technical challenge. Next slide. All right, this is just a list of some of the benefits to it. So you might think, well, why would I want to do this? I can just have my R&D team brainstorm or something like that. And it's true, but as we've just now gone through this process, I think we can appreciate the fact that an element of opening to the outside world can actually be useful. And so here we have this different papers that have been written. Those are across the top there. And down the side, we're looking at all these different benefits. So people who have studied this have basically said, well, there's things that it can accelerate innovation. It can promote your brand. If you look at number 11, it can create a creative and stimulating environment. Actually, people have studied this to show that employees who participate in these things also find it highly motivating. So that's also kind of nice. Enabling the rapid development and testing of ideas. And it also involves, if you're just looking through this quickly, number 18, user-centric lean innovation tools. So in other words, you're if you're using a process that we're describing today, you're kind of forced to take into consideration what other stakeholders think, and especially end users or customers think. So there's a lot of benefits. You can look at the slides afterwards. I'm not going to walk through this list in the interest of time. So here's this, what we're calling a dare to hack methodology. And so dare to hack is basically about how to organize these hackathons. So if you look, we're going to go clockwise from 12 o'clock noon. And basically, you know, the first thing you're doing is you are defining the information that you want. You're gonna figure out your challenge, what you're looking for, pick the venue, create the team, you know, get alignment between you, between the organizers, the company, and the potential challenge you're going to give to the crowd, establish the alignment, create the agenda, prepare the marketing plan. So this is actually, so when people see this list, they usually think, oh, it's okay, I'll just invite 100 people and then we'll just go for it. But actually, as you can see from this list, it takes a lot of preparation. The actual hackathon itself is you know, number 10 there. So it's only one, you know, in this it's not exactly the scale, but you know, in terms of the time spent, yeah, it's 1/12 of the total time. So you're going to basically make your preparations, you're going to run the hackathon, and then very, very importantly, you're going to capture the outcomes and the feedback, and you're going to do the follow-up, because you don't want to simply have the hackathon and then, of course, if you want to do it for boosting employee morale, then that's fine. Then you could stop there. But if you want to actually get something else out of it besides that, which I think you can, then you're going to have to also capture the outcomes and the feedback, and you're going to have to follow up. Okay, so just to give you a little bit more, so you can saw they were color coded there on that prior page. And so the dark blue one is the planning one. That's the one that takes the longest time. And so these, you know, we're calling these co-creation events, because, you know, we work together with the company to try and figure out how the best way to use this crowd, which coming together for a very short period of time. And you have to get everything very organized, creating a very specific environment, and you get every detail down, because each detail is going to influence your outcomes. If you ignore something, you might waste time for everybody. You run the hackathon, that's the execution phase. So then you basically do your, you know, you'll see in the real examples to follow. You get your challenge, and then you follow a design thinking process to do empathy, et cetera. We'll discuss that a little bit about how coming prepared with empathy is actually beneficial to you. Do brainstorming, do prototyping, do some kind of competition and getting a prize. And then the reflection part, which is also, as I mentioned before, very important, because this is after the hackathon. You're going to take your lessons learned. You're going to look at the ideas that were prototyped, but you're also going to look at the ideas that were not prototyped, because that might give you some other insights as well. And you set in motion how are you going to follow up on this? Are you going to incubate the winning team or teams? How are you going to do that? And so how are you going to follow up on the ideas that were presented during the hackathon? Okay, so now just to give you one slightly more level of detail here on these three phases. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through this in detail, but basically here you can see this the planning stage here. What you need to do, of course, you have to get the dates down. It's going to be tricky because you need to invite employees to this. Typically, you'll have a lot of employees, but you will probably have a lot of non-employees too, because you need the insights of different people. Then you're going to, you pick the topic, you pick the theme, you get the expectations, you make the challenge. Very important. We're going to see some examples of challenges in a few minutes. Figure out who the audience are. How many people do you want to have? Typical, you might have 50 to 100 people at these things, 20 to 100, depending on what you want. Do you want to do it physically? Do you want to do a virtual one? Mixed. Where's your locations? How long is it going to last? The typical one goes from, say, Friday evening to Sunday afternoon or Sunday noon. What kinds of prizes do you want to have? How much incentive do you want to give to people? Do you want to, give a prize of £1,000, £3,000, or some smaller amount, some kind of glory, et cetera? How are you going to handle registration? What's your budget? And what are your additional needs, et cetera? Okay. Then we're going to follow this design thinking. I mentioned this multiple times so far. What is design thinking? And here you can see basically, this is a linear picture of it, and it may not necessarily be so linear, but to give you the various phases of a design thinking process, you can start with the empathy phase, which may or may not be done before you get there. So you're going to try and understand, put yourself into the shoes of the whole value chain of whatever it is you're trying to do. If it's a new product, you might consider who the suppliers are, the customers, who are the end users, and you try and talk to them and understand where their pain points are, et cetera. Then for sure in the hackathon, so you might do that as part of the hackathon, although that's usually hard because it's hard to do that in a short period of time. Then you're going to do a define stage where you're trying to understand what are the overall problems that you noticed and what are the big issues. No solutions to be generated yet. And then when you finally get to the ideate stage, that's when you're doing brainstorming, structured brainstorming, you know, in a very careful way to make sure that you get lots of good ideas and get lots of ideas on the table and also build on ideas of others. And then you're going to make a prototype and test phase. Basically prototype, you're going to come up with some simple representation that's going to enable you to communicate your idea with the external world. And then typically what we do at the end of the first day is we have people show their prototypes to everybody. And what that does is increases a little bit the competitive pressure. And it also makes people realize, because the typical thing that people want to do in a hackathon is they want to develop an app, you know, an iPhone app or something. And that's not always the case, depending on how you've structured the problem. But in many cases, people make phone apps for everything. And so when they show their prototypes and they see that everyone else has an app and they do too, it forces them to try and think a little bit more broadly about what they can do, you know, in addition to having an app. And so I really like the idea of demonstrating a prototype at the end of the first day. If you do it on a Saturday, if you do it a Friday, you can do Friday. You can do definition and ideation, and then you can do more ideation and prototyping all day Saturday. Show it Saturday night, and then Sunday morning they can do the second prototype. That's iteration number 2 there, and they can test that. So when they say test the prototype, that means they're showing it to different people, preferably some kinds of similar people whom they got the ideas, the empathy from. And then you make your final pitch in front of the whole audience, in front of a panel of judges, and then you choose the winner or winners of the hackathon and you award the prizes. Okay. Then finally, for the third stage, this is the final part where you're trying to understand, capture the outcomes and feedback and do the follow-up. Just remember when you're doing this to record everything as you tear the room down. People use Post-it notes a lot in design thinking, and in these hackathons, they use Post-it notes to write down all their ideas on. And we really recommend that you actually take photos of all the ideas, including all the Post-it notes that are strewn everywhere, put on board, you know, grouped and clustered, before you throw everything away. Because you might be able to take that information and use it in the future. And structure and store all the relevant work. There may be an idea that was proposed that was really, really good, but that was the technology for it wasn't there now. But, you know, in a few years, that technology might be there, and you might be worth it to revisit some of the ideas that people had at the hackathon. And then you want to hold an actual lessons learned session with everybody who was involved in organization of it and with the company, in case it's not your company, to find, you know, to discuss the lessons learned from this whole thing. Make a report and then move on. Okay. I think I'm going to come back to this slide a little later, so just in the interest of time now, to give you some examples of 2 hackathons. I'll turn it back to Mirna, and then, well, actually, no, let me just talk about this for 1 minute here. Just back up one slide here. This just shows you, you know, you get your strategic insights at the beginning, and then, you know, you've got your hackathon, which is there in the middle of the graph. And that is using the design thinking process. So this is the early stage, you know, and the empathy part, as we mentioned, may be done before the hackathon even starts. So using this design thinking process in the early stages, and then once you've actually done some prototyping and picking of winner and et cetera, incubation, then you may turn that into something that is more of a product or service. And that's where, you know, we're not going to talk about this part today, but that's where you could get a lean startup approach. You could make a little corporate venture out of it, and you can have it run, you know, as a side venture to gain some traction in the market. And then you could use an agile approach maybe to do quick prototyping and quick market improvements before you actually launch the product. So let me stop there. Let me turn it over to Mirna now and talk a little bit about the examples of the 2 hackathons for today, and get the feedback of the people who were also working on those hackathons. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tucci. So we are now heading to give more insights from these 2 hackathons we have done with CEMEX and Continental. So I would like to start with CEMEX Hackathon. It was back in 2017. Towards the end of the year, CEMEX contacted us and asked if we could help to organize a hackathon in February. So by the time CEMEX was moving into very strong digital transformation, culture and projects, and they realized they needed to upgrade, let's say, to improve their culture, the innovation culture, to mobilize and engage employees towards this new digital era. So we decided to have this, CEMEX decided to have this in Cambridge. They had a very, very particular challenge that they needed to communicate internally to employees, but also very important, they were very, very extremely interested going back to the crowdsourcing mood of open the doors to ideas outside the organization. So we massively invited students from around UK, from Europe, from wherever. We had 14 universities participating together with CEMEX employees to solve this challenge. And the challenge was how to design and build a new innovation model, integrating processes, best practices, skills, tools, and data to increase employees' participation. So how could employees be more actively involved in this innovation process to adapt and incorporate now digital technologies? So one of the key factors, the hackathon was very successful in terms of participation. There were 60% employees and 40% students, plus subject matter experts that we also invited from CEMEX and universities from UK. And this is open. You can follow it in YouTube. We'll share it to you, this presentation. So there was a lot of communication outside the company to invite universities to join and others. And of course, also, how did you engage, and how we'll have some activities within the hackathon so that people could be very involved. Usually people ask, how does a hackathon look like? And I think this video I'm going to share really encapsulates and provides really in a great way how a hackathon looks like and the level of involvement and engagement around it. So I'll play this video, which lasts just about 3 minutes. Thank you.
CEMEX Hackathon is the first experience of CEMEX organizing a hackathon. And what we are trying to do is to generate ideas on a specific topic regarding the mobilization of employees in CEMEX transformation and digital innovation.
People from multidisciplines come together to solve a particular problem in an unusual collaborative way. There's a technical question put to the group that we ask them to answer, in this case, to help us configure a particular tool to enable us to innovate in the group.
We got 66 employees from all countries over Europe. And we also wanted to invite students from different universities in UK. So we have a mix of profiles and experiences and roles as part of the hackathon. We believe that the hackathon is a powerful instrument and mechanism to bring innovation at CEMEX, to be able to face some challenges and to get great ideas.
We're in 2 full days. The first day we have a basic introduction by people from CEMEX to explain the problem and the situation. And then we have an introduction to innovation, and then we tackle a design thinking methodology. First of all, they would understand the problem themselves. They would then think of empathize by going out into the field or talking with employees and doing interviews. Then they would do some brainstorming and then prototyping, and then there's going to be a pitch event where they will vote and give each other feedback. And then as of day 2, they will have a chance to refine the prototypes. They will do more work on the prototypes and brainstorming again. And then there will be a final pitch, which will be judged by a jury. And then the winning team will take home the prize. The winner would take home £3,000 plus the chance of being incubated. In other words, having CEMEX officially support the project and take it to the next step.
The CEMEX Hackathon, for me, is an opportunity for the business to get really valuable information from a large group of employees and a group of interested external students to really try to redefine what exactly we mean by an innovation culture within CEMEX.
Having some kind of end-of-year recognition, award, celebration, that came out as being a common thread amongst all of the participants. Likewise, having some kind of hub or space to gravitate to allow in-country activities.
It's very hectic, you learn a lot, there's a lot going on, your brain is stimulated the whole time, you're very motivated to come up with solutions, so I would definitely recommend it to anyone, students but also people in industry.
Well, today's hackathon is, I think, a good example of how organisations can come together, they can share thoughts, and more importantly, they can stay fresh and active, create cutting-edge ideas that will hopefully mobilise the organisation into a new future.
So, as you can see, it was extremely active. We had 2 days. The first day, as Professor Tucci was saying, the teams presented the first prototype, everybody voted, and then the second day we had a turnaround, completely improved prototypes. So we had, in fact, 13 teams. Each one did 2 prototypes. We had so many, we sort of counted them, more than 1,300 ideas. We had more than 100 participants. So overall, it was, I think, a great experience to listen all these employees and students how to stimulate and completely renew and change the innovation process towards the digital era in CEMEX. So just very briefly, as Professor Tucci said, we had an opening from the top management in CEMEX sharing their challenge, why they were doing this, why was it important. We had an empathize phase where employees and students could interview subject matter experts, also CEMEX leaders, why they were doing this, why was it important. The define phase, what's the problem statement, how could they identify the profiles of the personas, when in this case were the employees, how to stimulate employees to innovate. We had first ideation, the voting that we closed the first day, everybody voted on the first release of the prototypes. So we started again the second day with prototypes and then the pitching and so on. So that was very, very active hackathon in the Cambridge CEMEX, and we had more than 100 participants with CEMEX employees from around Europe, I would say around the world that joined, and students from different leading universities in UK. So now I will mute myself and I invite Martin Herrera, who was behind the organization of this very first hackathon for CEMEX. Martin, are you there? Could you kindly share to us your experience? What was it for CEMEX to do this first hackathon, and so on, please?
Okay, thank you, Mirna, and thank you for inviting me to be here. I think we don't have a recipe to execute hackathon in CEMEX. This example that we did in Cambridge, in UK, was the first that with all the energy and resources to execute this hackathon. As Dr. Tucci said, preparation was very, very important to define exactly what is the business challenge that we had in that moment. And for sure to invite students for several universities in UK and employees from several operations in Europe. So the preparation was very important in order to have these results. Because at the end, the result or the prototypes that the teams showed in that moment, we use for have now in CEMEX the new innovation model, increasing now the participation of more employees as possible, and we have now an end-to-end process annually, and continues in next years and next years. So the idea is the hackathons is a very important tool now for us in order to accelerate new ideas and openly, because all of the hackathons we did, we now include employees and students specifically. So it's very fun to do the hackathon. Yes, the 2 days is very fun, and sometimes it's stress, but the preparation is important. And after hackathon also is the most thing, I think the most important, because we need to really apply the suggestions, the proposals of the teams. So just to highlight the result from the hackathon in UK, after the hackathon, CEMEX and top management understand how hackathons can help us to innovate and to have in our innovation process. For sure, solving specific business problems is not just to have a time to have a fun time, but the important thing is to solve or to propose solve. For sure, we don't have the result is not to apply immediately. It's the good start to really design and construct the solution in order to put in place in our operations. Other thing that I would like to highlight is, okay, I mentioned that different employees for different operation, different students, but also the facilitators. Sometimes, in this case, we had the support from several professors of the universities plus LAA, us, ourselves, for sure, in order to really get the outcome that we expect. So I think that Mirna is the most important thing to share today. But now we have a playbook, but at the end, we don't have this playbook is a Lego. We can use several pieces of this playbook depending of the challenge and the time that we have for develop or prepare the hackathon and execute the hackathon and harvest the results after the hackathon. Students enjoy very well because the food, some presents, and at the end the prize is important. Just to finalize my participation, Mirna, is that we have different flavors of the hackathons. One flavor is first day we stop at 8 p.m. and continue next day, and we are another that is continue 24 hours, 48 hours continuously. But the challenge in the continues to have the all night working is to have different activities for the participants, other prizes in the midnight, and some shows in order to keep the momentum and the mood for creating the proposal. So that's it.
Thank you, Martin. A question from me, just to align to the importance of the methodology. So what was your experience in Cambridge with the design thinking approach? So we planned a lot for months, I think, a couple of months, the hackathon, using design thinking. So do you think the methodology was helpful for leading to the outcome? Because some of the hackathons do not use design thinking. So what is it from your point of view? And you're also quite, I know you use design thinking in CEMEX. So do you think it was helpful for the hackathon?
It's very, again, design thinking again is a Lego.
Mm-hmm.
we can use pieces of the design thinking methodology, that's end-to-end, but it's important to follow those pieces of the design thinking when we decide during the preparation. If we decide to use empathy map, perfect, use it. If we decide to use the customer journeys, or in this case, employee journeys, perfect. For sure, the solution and prioritizing and the prototyping, perfect. But the most important thing is everything that is decided before to execute the hackathon. What pieces of the design thinking methodologies, wherever you use it, at IDEO, whatever, all of them are the same. The important thing is to follow, and the timing to use the pieces during the today, because to be very disciplined during the execution is important to keep the time in order to get at the end the results on time.
Perfect.
The summary.
Yeah,
the summary, design thinking is very helpful, but again, is not too forced to use all of things in every single hackathon. It depends on the challenge. You can use specific elements.
If I could just jump in, I agree completely, and I think that design thinking itself gets you two things, right? One is this emphasis on empathy, or this emphasis on understanding the user needs, or something like that. And the second one is it gets you the discipline to make sure that you keep going and doing all the stages. You don't forget anything, and that you don't, that you basically allocate the correct amount of time. Now there might be other ways. If you can probably do the discipline part anyway, as long as you're organized enough. And depending on how much you need the empathy, then you could say that maybe you could do something else instead of it. But the reason I like it is because indeed it gives you both of those things at the same time. It gives you the emphasis on the user needs, and it also gives you the discipline to keep going during this, because it's such a time crunch. If you're not super organized on the timing, you'll end up getting really far behind really quickly. So that's how I react to design thinking as well.
Perfect.
You allow me, Mirna, another important thing is the set of the session of hackathon. The set is important. Is to really to give them information as much possible in order to help the teams to understand the problem. Is before to start with empathizing, whatever it is, be sure that the people understand the problem.
Yes, I think in the case of CEMEX, the context on the transformation CEMEX wanted to achieve with the digital technologies and how to innovate with the digital technologies. And one of the things that probably we didn't mention is we did share a lot of information in terms of documents and articles and videos with all participants from CEMEX employees and the students. So we usually expect participants of any hackathon to already come with an understanding aligned to what you just said, Martin, on what's the problem, on why is it relevant, what is it that is intended to be solved. In here was two things. It was digital transformation, how this digital transformation will change the construction industry on one end, and how the company was evolving to a digital world, and the fact of how do you become innovative as an employee to bring ideas towards digital transformation. So I think all of this together, we picked specific articles and videos so that people could read and watch before the hackathon to bring already some background. I think that was extremely helpful to understand the problem before the hackathon, and we did that. That was part of the pre-hackathon activities that we definitely did for CEMEX together when we did the hackathon. Definitely. Is there any other, Professor Tucci? So you were there You were facilitating CEMEX Hackathon. What was your experience in that hackathon?
Oh no, it was. I mean, it was great. You saw the video.
Uh,
I mean, I had a very nice time. I thought it was very stimulating, and I actually liked a lot of the ideas that came out of it. So I thought it was a very great day, a couple great few days, weekend, and I think that it seems as if also the company got a lot out of it as well, which is maybe the most important thing, aside from the stimulating environment. And I think it was very motivating for the people who were there. So overall, I was highly, positive about the whole experience. And I think, in my opinion, it was a big success. So I was glad to be part of it there.
Yes. So from just highlighting the afterwards, I think what happened in CEMEX Hackathon and in the other ones we have done, from my point of view, there's of course always a winning team, but I think what CEMEX did afterwards, they shared to me a little bit of the results. They mixed the ideas of the different teams to the winning one. So that was another very interesting thing, and many ideas were documented, how to integrate from the winning one others to enrich. So the fact that probably you have one winner does not mean that the ideas from the other prototypes could not be incorporated in the next, let's say, cycle of the prototyping. And I think that's what CEMEX did. I don't know, Martin, if you could share a little bit what happened afterwards, the hackathon with the findings. How did that revolutionize the process in CEMEX for innovation?
Yes, you said we combine all the prototypes in one, and propose to the top management. This is the first approach to have a global innovation model in order to increase the participation of the employees. Perfect. And now we have in place. This is the second year that we are running the new model, and we are adding additional things. But the trigger for this new innovation model in CEMEX was come from the hackathon, the hackathon, and because at the end, having ideas outside and inside, and the combination is priceless. So now it's a second year running in this model, and we really get the expectations from the top management that really to increase the participation. Past year, the number of ideas globally were more than 2,000 ideas, and we follow the process, the funnel, is in order to decide what the top 10, top 5 ideas we or CEMEX found to continue developing the not just ideas, now the solution. It's important. And just a comment is, I think this is important also for the audience, is the facilitation is very important in the hackathon. Preparation and during the hackathon. Keep to provide to the participant a good experience. Is taking care of every single piece of the location, the timing, the food, and supporting the teams to really follow the methodology is very important. Facilitation is very important. That's it.
I see there are 4 questions. Maybe we should just try and run through those really quickly.
Okay.
Before we move to the Continental case. Do you think, Mirna?
Perfect. So we have one first question from Luis Aviles. What kind of challenges can be addressed with hackathons, and what kind shouldn't be addressed with this way of working? Would that be for you, Professor Tucci?
I mean, I'm happy to.
I can also.
So I think that there are lots of things that you can do and certain ones are easier and certain ones are more difficult. I wouldn't say that there's some, I mean, you know, solving maybe scientific, you know, like basic science research, I think is, you know, obviously that may not be the best. Although, you know, you never know. Getting a bunch of people together and brainstorming isn't a bad thing. But in general, if you have a tangible product, something that you're really trying to improve, that's usually considered to be the easiest thing to do in a hackathon. And then the more you move towards services, you know, the trickier it gets. It's not impossible because there's lots of different ways of prototyping services, such as making videos or making a role play or making a mock-up. So, you know, it just requires a little bit more thinking depending on what you do with the challenge. And then of course you're going all the way to something like a new business model. That's very, very, you know, flu, you know? So it's harder to describe it and harder to look at it. But again, there you can use different prototyping techniques to get your idea across. So I would say, you know, of course, things with short cycle times, you know, are typically nice for these hackathons. This one we talked about here was about organizational transformation. That's also something that could be tackled in a relatively easy way. So I feel like there are certain things now, and some people would say, well, you shouldn't do this. I did this with open data in the food sector. And someone was saying, you know, oh, well, you know, some of these ideas need FDA approval or something like that. So that was an extra layer of complication. But the way I like to think about it is, this is an early stage. This is really, really upstream stuff. You know, so you take this, you work on it, you generate a bunch of ideas, and then maybe, yes, you may need to get a medical device approval or something eventually, or you may need to get a drug approval or whatever. Yes, those make it so it's more difficult to implement afterwards, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you can use it for the idea generation phase in general.
Am I on mute? No. So just to complement that question, I'm going to go quickly to the conclusion. That there's much to go, but here just to share. So what type of hackathons have we done so far? So for example, for Continental, so we have Monica now with from Continental. We have how to help Continental move from an auto parts supplier to a mobility leader. That was one challenge, let's say like this. The other one is how to mine the digital talent gap. So we have a talent gap in organizations, moving from non-digital to becoming digital. How you mine, how you decrease the breach of knowledge of digital to move towards digital transformation. That was we did that in 5 locations actually, and then we had them in Netherlands for the paper industry, how to integrate the value chain to innovate. So we had big corporations, small, different actors of the whole value chain in the hackathon. How could we integrate them to innovate? That was the challenge. Then we had another challenge, and we did it twice. How to enable collaboration in innovation hubs. So innovation hubs are locations where different organizations could co-develop solutions. So how could we have a model and a way, a framework, a prototype of how to organize these actors to collaborate. Then we were saying the innovation process. And then we had also how to design video games. And these are just, we just recently had a last one, how to help organizations to develop a roadmap for circular economy. So that was the latest one we have done in UK in collaboration with Bio University. So that was, so should I continue with the questions or continue with Continental? What do you think, Professor Tucci?
Oh, I would say let's move on to Continental now.
Continental, perfect.
We can come back to those questions.
Monica, are you there?
Hi, Myrna. Yes, I'm here.
Are you there? Okay, so I'm going to pass your slides and then the introduction. Would you like to start?
Sure. Okay. First of all, thank you, Myrna, for including us. It was a great experience for us to really collaborate with LAA for this hackathon. So as probably some of you already know, the industry, the automotive industry is going through a big change. we are really changing a lot of paradigms, and we are moving from automotive to a mobility concept. And this mobility concept has one characteristic, that is ecosystems. We really need to understand what is going on around, and not only with the end consumer or not only with the customers, but really how the ecosystem is seeing this mobility topic. So for this, we organized a hackathon that was very interesting. It was held in Mexico City. And for this, we had participation not only from Continental organization, we had participation from different organizations in Mexico, like AMIA, the Automotive Mexican Association. We had participation from universities, and I think it's not the most valuable, but one of the valuable things that we had is our customers. So we had Ford, we had BMW participating in the workshop, the hackathon, and this was really a great introduction for us. So can we go to the next one? Okay. As you can see, this mobility challenge is not only challenging the products or services that we offer, but it's really about the skills that we need to develop, the leaders that we need to have, how to handle innovation ecosystems, how to introduce and explore new business model, how to deal with data. This is something that we were not used to, at least in our company. We were used to deliver products, and then we just forget about them. You know, we were selling volume, and now we need to really start looking after services, how we create solutions for the customers, how we get in the minds of the consumers. That was something that we didn't do in the past. So for this, we need to also build up a lot of know-how and knowledge that will allow us to really face this challenge and be successful. So as you can see, it's not about finding one specific solution. This hackathon was about finding what is the framework that we need to create in order to face this challenge, which was, I think, very, very interesting, at least from our side. So basically, the challenge was how to really face this global reorganization and become a leader of mobility. What we did was a 2-day event. The first day was the normal structure of a hackathon. So we really wanted to have empathy maps for the different stakeholders. We wanted to understand what is the different perspectives and so on, and build possible solutions. But what was very interesting as well, and that is something that at least we haven't done before in a hackathon, was the second day, we really took the output from the first day and we immediately translated into a strategic plan for our organization. So we really worked together with a team of LAA in order to define action plans and specific projects that can help us to go through this challenge. If you want to make a comment, Myrna.
So in terms of practices, I was extremely surprised, and we were discussing before, first of all, the very detailed stakeholder map analysis to make the teams. So as you can see from the challenges that Continental decided to have, we had 6 teams, which employees could be invited to the hackathon. That was number 1. And then we did this hackathon in the Tecnológico de Monterrey, in a university in Mexico City. It was also open to all the other universities from Mexico City. So the idea here was, how do we invite all the employees and the students? So we did, I think it was 2 months of research together with Continental to bring insights of the 6 challenges that we had that were defined by Continental. And we had different sessions before the hackathon to introduce these trends and give insights of what was happening in the generally speaking, and in the automotive industry around mobility. So we had different sessions for employees and students to join to get these insights, let's say, starting the empathy space of the design thinking. And I think that was one of the key requests from the head of R&D in Mexico City. He wanted people both employees, participants, both employees and students to come to the hackathon with already some understanding of the problem, as was Martin was explaining, and what was the insights and what was coming and why mobility. So I think that was also very rich in this particular hackathon with Continental. And the second was the need from the R&D leader in Mexico, the innovation leader, who said, I want to go out not only with the prototypes, but with a plan. So the second full day was using the Hoshin-Kanri methodology, and Continental is very, very experienced to do strategic maps with this methodology, which is a lean methodology. We came out with a plan for and a very detailed activity plan for each of these 6 challenges, looking at and transforming the prototype into an action plan. And I think that was extremely, from my point of view, rich and particular from this hackathon. I don't know, Monica, would you like to add anything?
Yes, just to give you an idea on how useful this exercise was. So the output from the first day was shared with all the participants. So even other companies benefit from this output. But the most valuable thing, that this is something that still is present in our strategy, was what we managed to translate into actions in our Hoshin-Kanri metrics for the strategic planning for that year. And there are some activities that we are still following up, for example, the competencies and so on. So it was, as Myrna said, it was a very interesting process to really go from design thinking, very creative, very open analysis of the problem, to a very specific actions and topics that we can really transform in a short term into results for our R&D center here.
Perfect. So this is how we ended up that hackathon, Mexico City. I'm going to now stop sharing, Monica, so you could kindly share your screen with your presentation.
Okay. Here. Which screen are you looking at?
We are looking at the right slide, the one that has your
Perfect.
Video. Yeah.
Perfect. So what I want to share in the next 3 slides is we consider this practice of hackathon, design thinking, and open innovation very valuable for our company. We used it in the past for innovation process, and this is a practice that we have been doing with universities here in Mexico for already 5 years. I want to share a small video and then a little bit of the insights that we have on how to handle hackathons for product and services innovation from our side.
Monica, I don't think we hear, at least I don't. Maybe, I don't know if you would like to again share the sound as we did earlier.
Our computer sound? Okay, let me.
Yes, no. We know.
Is it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Is it better?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, this video is basically a little bit of the marketing that we do for this innovation workshop. This is a common practice in our R&D center here in Mexico. We have these workshops 3 to 5 times per year. It depends on the challenges that we find in the organization. Normally we have participation from 100 to 200 students every time, and at least 10 universities are also included here. We have Continental employees involved, and we have normally as an output 20 concepts that I'm proud to say that normally at least one gets forward in the process of innovation in Continental. So as I said before, we use this for product and service innovation, and the one that we held with the LAA was the first time that we used the methodology for a strategy development, which I found very, very interesting. But this is more or less how we collaborate with universities and how we include this kind of design thinking methodologies in the innovation process inside Continental. We have divided the process into different kind of programs that we shared with universities. First, we have scouting agents. Basically, this is the exploration projects that we do with universities about just finding new trends, finding new opportunities, new markets, and so on. Then we have the innovation workshop that is focused on the ideation part of our process, really trying to find the first ideas and concepts for solutions. Then we have what we call Tech Test Challenge. This is something that is also based on design thinking, but is more focused on developing a prototype or a proof of concept that is already showing the functionality in a little bit deeper modus. And then we have the prototype mission. This is 1 year project with universities and engineers from Continental. And from these, we do have prototypes that we can already show to customers. So as you can see, we really lived inside Continental the design thinking spirit, and we want to introduce these kind of projects and also include universities, because we are convinced that collaboration and open innovation is it's a key part of the success of innovation activities in a company. And last but not least, this is a little bit deeper view of what we do in what we call innovation workshop. That is basically a hackathon. We really get inputs from inside the company, so experts or action field leaders or business units leaders, they do come to us with a specific challenge. Then we prepare the challenge, we explored, we prepared our coaches and our internal employees, and we do the request to the universities for participants. And out of this, after following up the design thinking methodology for hackathons that has been already explained very well in this cappuccino talk, what is key for us is that the outputs need to connect to the rest of the innovation process inside the company. So we really link this to a tech test challenge or to another organization or platforms that we have internally. So the ideas really move forward. And we start going through that funnel from the innovation workshop to something that is successful in the market. So this is more or less the insight from our side. And I think it's has been very valuable to hear how other companies are experiencing as well the benefits of having hackathons as part of the normal practices. I can only recommend that you try to look at least how how does it work and how you can use these methodologies as well.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you. I'm going to proceed very quickly with, okay, could you
let me stop sharing?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so now we had, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let me share my screen. I don't know why. Okay, so just very quickly to have some time for questions, and this goes back to Professor Tucci's slide. So what we are suggesting organizations, because it could be also governments or universities that want to do hackathons, is once you have identified the insights and identified a challenge that you don't know how to solve, this is the best time to start or think of starting a hackathon before even starting the development or even the functional prototyping. So here you will have a conceptual prototype that is really much linked to an insight and a challenge that you don't know how to solve, and understanding the empathize phase, meaning interviewing the users or the consumers or the clients. What is the challenge about? What are their needs? Empathize with them. So just going back to some of the questions that I heard before, well, the video games was, I think, the most linked to a product itself. Most of them have been solving a strategic question or a process improvement question or a strategic plan, let's say, how to innovate in a value chain, even about knowledge about programs, innovation and training programs, which was this, how to mine the digital talent gap, and so on. So these have been the challenges so far in terms of business hackathons that we have worked with different organizations. And just to highlight some of the conclusions, we really suggest that organizations use the design thinking methodology. This gives an approach and this gives a structure to the hackathon. We also have different templates. Some of the templates are done ad hoc. For example, for Continental, it was very important to understand the skills to imagine to move from auto parts engineering to a mobility. So we had a different templates to help them understand the skills, also for leadership. So also predefining skills for teams to organize and structure ideas are very, very important. If possible, having some interviews and a work on the empathy phase before the hackathon, that's also extremely valuable. And also the awards, I have to say, people do go, especially external people, going back to the crowdsourcing that Professor Tucci mentioned at the beginning. If you invite externals, they do care about what is the award and of course what's the challenge. So if you have a very interesting challenge, that would also attract people. So these have been some of the conclusions we have done so far. So we have been, let's say, improving or increasing the value of this methodology with each of the hackathons that we do. There's not one way of doing it. I really like the way Martin say it's a Lego. So depending on the challenge, depending on the organizational need, you can adapt the hackathon. And these different hackathons have been, all of them, different. The facilitation is definitely very important. In some cases, like for Continental and CEMEX, we did have a facilitator per team. Some cases it's basically me or Professor Tucci alone facilitating, but it really depends on the organization. We have to be very, very strict with the timing. Timing and timekeeping is super important. The idea is that it's very clear what's the challenge before, and explain, give them time to read and watch these videos before the hackathon. That was also very important lessons learned. And what we have learned in the last hackathons is we really encourage the organization and the participants to know as much as they can from the problem to have more successful outcomes after the hackathon. So we have been asking companies what are the major, what's the impact of them besides solving a solution, solving a challenge and giving prototypes. So first of all, they learn. In the last hackathon we did about circular economy, I would say not even 10% of the participants knew what was circular economy. I think most of them were interested to do it. We did it with a university in UK. So they were all very, very happy that they could understand what does it mean circular economy. Co-creating with people that you don't know. Sometimes we have only employees. We have had a couple of hackathons only with the company employees or organization employees. Sometimes nobody knows each other. So the idea is that the methodology gives the insights to enable everybody to co-create, listen to ideas, developing the prototypes. Also, people are very curious about design thinking. What is this all design thinking? So that's also part of the hackathon. They understand now the steps of design thinking, and they can continue carrying out the design thinking in the organization. Solving challenges, and again, going back to CEMEX highlights, the fact that you have a winner doesn't mean that you cannot also incorporate the other ideas or the pieces of the other prototypes in the next development of the prototype. So that's what we have observed in different organizations. And of course, having fun. I think in all the hackathons, we have all this having fun. The child in each heart of the participants come out when they have to develop the prototypes. So now we will go to the Q&A. Let me read the questions that we have. I will stop sharing now. We have more questions. Let me read. So from Irene Lozano, if you recommend to ask participants to sign a confidentiality letters, so probably not employees because they already have, but have you, she's asking, do you recommend to get signed confidentiality letters from participants? Yes, Monica?
We do. Normally, we do have NDAs signed with the universities. Therefore, the students are already included. Normally, we ensure that they are following this protocol, but we also have confidentiality letters, shorter version for the students, so they are aware that they are, let's say, already included in this compromise that we do with the universities. So basically all the learning that they have, because we also include some trainings, it's for them. I mean, it's knowledge that they take, but at least from our side, from Continental side, we are kind of careful with this topic. So we do have agreements with the universities in advance, NDA signed formally, and the students are aware of the protocols from the beginning.
Perfect.
This is at least how we handle it.
Yes, just to highlight briefly for the CEMEX one, we also had agreed on a confidentiality agreement with CEMEX legal department. So I don't know, Martin, for the other hackathons, I'm assuming you always ask participants to sign these NDAs
No, it's part of the process during the registration of the participants. All of them sign the confidentiality letter. It's part of our playbook. We're gonna miss this part because at the end, the outsiders really it's give their knowledge and ideas, etc. It's part of this tool is to give all the authority to the corporation. So we, during the registration part of the first half an hour and during the hackathon, the students, professors, all of them signed this legal letter.
Perfect. The last question that we have is getting these insights on the situation that we're living because of the coronavirus. What do you think about online hackathons? Could that be the possibility? Could that be the future? Perhaps we can even incorporate people, experts that could not go there physically. So what could be your insights or expectations of online hackathons?
Professor Tucci.
Okay.
In my experience, a very intensive hackathon as we do it in real life, I haven't tried to do this because normally it's easier to have shorter sessions. But what we have participate, and actually we do normally at least one project per year, is this kind of contests that are doing this project development, but it's in a long term in terms of 3 months to 6 months development. And what we do is different sessions to collaborate. And we have developed projects with students in Copenhagen, in Germany, in Switzerland, and so on, and have worked very nicely, but it's a different dynamic. You need to adjust. This is my experience.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just really quickly, I see we're out of time. It's going to be a tricky transition to do this completely online. I think that there might be different ways of doing it, but I think we'll all have to do some experimentation now. There's in Zoom here, there's breakout rooms. So it's, you could almost try and mimic some of the things that we're doing in a real live session online, which would enable a much larger scale. So that's kind of great. But what's hard to do is try to keep people focused when they're online, So I think that's part of the challenge that we have. So I don't know if it translates perfectly to the online context or not. I doubt it. There's going to be some pluses and minuses to doing it online, and we're just going to have to start experimenting with it in the near future.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Professor Tucci, Martin, and Monica, for joining and for sharing your hackathon experiences. Extremely thank you and valuable. Just to close, the next Cappuccino Talk will be on the 23rd of April, and we will be sharing lean innovation best practices. We will have a very detailed case from one of the co-authors of the book that we have published a couple of years ago. So thank you, everyone. Please keep safe. Please keep safe in these current days, and all the best for everyone. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.